Hi, this is Jamey with Stonemaier Games, and I'm here today to talk about my favorite game mechanism in a game called the Grand Austria Hotel. First, though, I wanted to thank a backer and supporter named Andy Ungland, who sent me this beautiful dice tray that he made just for Stonemaier Games. I don't have a dice tray already, and so this is perfect, and it's perfect for the Grand Austria Hotel, which includes so many dice that they end up scattered across the table. It could not come with perfect timing. It literally came today as I planned to talk about the Grand Austria Hotel. So thank you so much, Andy. So in the Grand Austria Hotel, the idea is that you're running this hotel, you're enticing visitors into the hotel with tea and coffee and treats, and then you're trying to get them to actually stay the night in a room that you prepare for them. It's essentially a point salad game. There are a lot of different ways to get points. But the core mechanism also happens to be my favorite mechanism. That is, at the beginning of every round, the first player takes a giant handful of dice and rolls all of them at once. And that's why this dice tray is going to be so helpful, because they really do go everywhere, and there are lots of cubes in the game, so the dice bump against the cubes and whatnot. And once you've rolled all the dice, players organize the dice based on the numbers that were rolled, their normal six-sided dice. There are 6 columns that you arrange the dice into. You put all the ones in one column, twos in another column, and so on. And each of the columns corresponds with a different action you can take on your turn. So it's basically a dice drafting game. On your turn, there are a couple other things you can do on your turn, but I'm focusing on the main one. On your turn, you choose one of the dice, and you take the action that that die corresponds with. Now, this mechanism is interesting for a few reasons. The overarching idea is that it adds variety to the game. You're not going to have the same exposure or access to the same actions every turn, because sometimes dice may not even roll for a certain action. You may not roll any 3s, so you can't take the 3 action. And so it adds some good variety that way. And it adds tension, because you're kind of hoping, you're maybe hoping that someone won't pick a certain die so that you can pick a certain die by the time it gets to your turn. But the really cool part about this mechanism is what the numbers actually mean. And by numbers, I mean the number of dice that are rolled for each number. For example, the first action, the number 1 action, is that you can take some resource cubes. There are 2 resource, I believe it's brown and white are the 2 resource cubes that you can take for that action. And the number you can take, like as you're picking up the die, the number of cubes you can take are equal to the number of dice in that column as you're taking the die. So say there are 3 1s available in that column. And I'm oversimplifying this action a little bit. There's a weird little thing where you can only take white cubes that are equal to or less than the number of brown cubes you take. I don't think that's all that important. I'm just going to refer to cubes here. So say there are 3 number 1 dice in the number 1 column. If you take one of those dice, you get to take 3 cubes, because there are 3 dice, 3 cubes. And so what this does is, on any given turn, there might be a ton of dice in a certain column. And so it makes that column really valuable for that round, but maybe it wasn't a thing that you were actually planning on doing that round. Maybe you don't really need white and brown cubes this round. Maybe you don't need money. That's another one of the options. Or maybe you don't need to bring in a staff member. But it's really enticing because there's so many dice there. At the same time, because there's so many dice there, there's a pretty good chance that so you take 2 dice per round. You take 1, and then there's a snake draft, so it goes around to all the other players. They do it, and it goes back around to you. So you might be able to wait it out and wait until some people have taken those dice, but there are going to be a few left over because there's so many. Whereas you might have really wanted to take the number 2 action, but there's only 1 die there. And so if that die goes away, you won't be able to take that action anymore. So there's a really interesting tension there, a nice push and pull to, there's a reason to take a die when there's just 1 die there, but there's also reason to take a die when there are a lot of dice there. The 2 kind of caveats to all this that I should mention is that if You roll a number. If there are number sixes, if there are 6 numbered value dice, you can pay $1 to take one of those, and then you can take any other action. And when you do so, you're looking at the number of dice in the 6 column. So if there are 2 dice numbered 6, you can pay $1 and then choose one other action and take that action twice if you want. So maybe take 2 cubes for another action. So there is a cost to use in the 6, but it gives you more flexibility to take actions that maybe aren't available anymore. Also, there are actually 3 caveats. The second caveat is on your turn one time, you can pay $1 to act as if there's an additional die on an action. So if there's like 1 die on the number 2 column, but you were really hoping that there would be 2 there, you could pay $1 and then pretend that there are 2 dice, even though you're picking up the single die that's there. The last caveat, and this is actually pretty cool, I wasn't even thinking about mentioning this, but the other option you have is just to pass and not take a turn. But you're not out if you do this. If you pass and you don't take a turn, after everyone else has either taken turns or passed twice, because you get 2 turns per round, it comes back to you, and you will permanently remove one of the dice that's left in this action selection area. You'll remove it, and then you'll roll all the other dice. So they may come out in a completely different configuration. So say like you were really hoping to take action number 3, and there are no dice there, and maybe there was only 1 6, or there were no 6s, so it didn't give you the flexibility to take that number 3 action. You could push your luck essentially and hope that you're going to roll the 3 dice, And by doing that, you're delaying your turn, because everyone else is taking their turn before you when there are lots of dice there. And you don't really know what you're going to roll. They're dice, it's random. But it is a lot of fun to do that, because you're always hoping that maybe you'll have not just the roll that will let you do the action, but an amazing roll that'll give you like 4 dice on the number 3. And even better than this, well, not even better, but alongside with that, if you do roll the dice again after passing, you remove 1, you roll the dice, and you don't get what you want, you can pass again, and you can then remove another die and roll all the remaining dice. In the last game I played, a player in the last round of the game really needed one specific action, and he kept doing that until he got down to just 2 dice. And then he still didn't roll it. He didn't ever get the action. But it was, the rolls were meaningful and dramatic every round. Oh, every time he re-rolled them. So anyway, there's a lot going on. And there's a lot going on in the game in general, but I really love this essentially a dice drafting mechanism, which is in other games. There's a game called Castle Dice where there's dice drafting. But this game, I would say, is probably my favorite dice drafting game. It just does it really well. And that mechanism itself, even just in isolation, would be a lot of fun. If you have any other examples of dice drafting that you'd like to mention, I'm sure there are actually others. I know I've heard about others. But if you can think of any others that you want to mention in the comments, I'd love to hear about them, because it's a pretty cool mechanism. Thanks.